So it has been a couple of months since the battle of the strongest sorcerers in Jujutsu society wrapped up their legendary battle. Of course, I am referring to Satoru Gojo versus Ryomen Sukuna. This fight made waves throughout social media as it was being released, starting with chapter 223. Both of these characters carry so much individual weight and have brought some of the best moments to the series, so anyone with a pulse could see why this fight is so well regarded. Real quick pause on this video. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a question for you. Are you looking for something fashionable and affordable to wear anime related these days? Are you looking for an anime inspired t-shirt, a hoodie, a hat, or even like lights or anything of that nature? Well, boy, I tell you, head on over to animeexpressstore.com and oh yeah, they'll hook you up over there. I actually just copped one of these Megami t-shirts. This thing's actually fire. I'm actually so excited to get it. And ladies and gentlemen, I have a special announcement for y'all. Go ahead at your next checkout, hit code Daffy10 for 10% off your next purchase, man. Oh yeah, we sponsored now, so I can curse in this bitch. Yeah! Remember, Daffy10, DAFFY10 for 10% off on your next purchase, man. Special shout out to the guys over at animeexpressor.com for sponsoring me and having me affiliated. I really appreciate it. It's actually really big news for my channel. I'm actually stunned at the progress we made recently. So yeah, also real quick, the more you guys use this code, the higher or the closer we'll get to having more codes, and so like more discounts. So eventually be 10%, that'll be 20%, then 30%, and God knows even maybe you're at 25%. Okay, back to the video. Satoru Gojo was a fan favorite from his first appearance on screen. His pretty boy demeanor, devastating jujutsu abilities, and the story consequences that surround him are pivotal in making him one of the pinnacles of anime stan culture today. Our first interaction with Gojo as an audience member is him arriving and making fun of Megami for being in bad sorts and being so unbothered with the resurrection of the most maniacal and heinous sorcerer in history, he ends up plopping his whole ass on him and says, "My student is watching, so I'm gonna show off real quick," and proceeds to launch him across this rooftop and give him some of the slickest animation I've seen in a good while with a powerful haymaker. Immediately, we understand that this dude means business. He's so charismatic that we just can't help but love him. The overwhelming confidence he wields, we clearly see that he just isn't pump faking, but he's actually like that. Even when asked if Sukuna was fully resurrected and they were to fight, would he be in any danger, he responded with, "Nah, I'd win." Yes, I said the meme there. You happy? Jesus Christ, this lobotomy Kaisen shit is it's something else, man, I'm telling you. Gojo has a very interesting set of abilities that immediately sparks interest in the viewer as well because of how Gege flips these super common abilities that we see in other media in a different light. If Gojo just had a barrier around him, it wouldn't really be that interesting, would it? Things like 17's barrier or Pain's Shinra Tensei are extremely common throughout different media, but having an ability of infinity, where the closer something gets to you, the slower it gets, and that's interesting. While yeah, having a beam that obliterates everything that it touches is cool, but having the powers of attraction and repulsion make it seem a bit more obtuse. Presentation is everything, people, seriously. It's not what you're serving, but how you're serving it. As we get a closer understanding of Gojo's mindset, he begins to have a certain level of depth that is not apparent on the surface. Gojo has an inherently arrogant but not ignorant nature. As we see in the hidden inventory arc, Gojo in his youth initially was of the opinion that those that are weak are simply weak and that they are barely worth the time of the strong that they're supposed to protect them. Gojo believed that those who were weak were simply less than, and that's all there was to it, until Geto tried to convince him that it is the duty of the strong to protect the weak. And Gojo didn't really begin to believe this philosophy until he met and befriended Riko Amanai. Riko was the star plasma vessel, a being that is capable of merging with Master Tengen, and although she was weak, quote unquote, she still had goals and dreams before they were cut down short by Toji Zenin. Gojo's sanity was almost permanently broken after retrieving Riko's body and being surrounded by members of the Time Vessel Association cult. He witnessed this large mass of people clapping and celebrating a 14-year-old's death. The thought of killing these sadists crossed his mind, but Geto brought him back down to earth after explaining that a sorcerer must have a reason to take a life, not just because they're upset. After this, Gojo is closer to the one we know in the modern day. He remains just as goofy and charismatic, but he is 100% focused on raising the next generation of sorcerers to surpassing him. He sees the youth that he oversees as bits of gold that he must polish and refine. He vouched for Yuji's execution to be postponed indefinitely, and he refused to have the higher-ups control Yuta or kill him. He even threatened them directly and said that if it came down to it, he would be on his students' side rather than those old fools, quote unquote. Gojo's dedication to his students is extremely fierce, no matter how bad of a teacher he is, as he thought about killing the higher-ups when Yuji was presumably dead after the detention center incident. Gojo knows that his time on this earth is limited, and while he is alone, the honored one, it is his responsibility alone to cultivate and raise new talent to protect the weak when he is gone. We see this very clearly in how the students at Jujutsu Tech are being trained in their respective powers, especially Yuta, Megumi, Yuji, and Nobara, compared to the Kyoto students being trained by Urahime. This isn't because Urahime is a bad teacher by any means. It has been said that Gojo is a horrible teacher when it comes to explaining things compared to his peers, but rather that the Kyoto students are what your average sorcerer's strength level is at that age. Gojo is looking for the best and brightest to raise up so they can surpass him and make the world a better place. So on the one hand, we have the strongest sorcerer of the modern day. Cool, funny, handsome, and essentially a nuclear missile that Jujutsu Tech has holstered on their belt 24/7. But in the other, we have one of the worst calamities to ever be birthed into the world. We have the highest profile cannibal besides Sweeney Todd and Hannibal Lecter. We have Ryomen Sukuna. I have talked about this man quite literally for hours on my channel, so I'm going to try to keep this to a minimum, but Sukuna was worshipped as a deity during the Heian era for his unmatched strength during the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery, and he is one of the most ruthless sorcerers to be ever known besides Noritoshi Kamo. Sukuna is extremely similar to Yujiro Hanma in their mentalities, remarkably so. Sukuna eats when he wants, kills who he wants, and he does what he wants, whenever he wants. Without a rhyme or a reason, Sukuna operates on his own whim at all times in order to find a thrill exhilarating enough that is worth his time. Sukuna has a very demented sense of humor, as he prevented and threatened to kill all those around him from moving as Jogo's maximum meteor was careening down towards the bystanders of their fight. He only allowed them to move once he gave his approval, which was mere seconds before the meteor struck the city of Shibuya. Sukuna is not so vain that he refuses to acknowledge one's strength, as he told Jogo, listen man, you know the quote, man, you know the line, and y'all hear me mention it every time I bring him up, but this line is some pressure. Sukuna thirsts for a good quality fight. It has been centuries since he was given a proper opponent that actually tested his abilities and pushed him to the brink. Every opponent so far that Sukuna has come into contact with since we were introduced to him has been extremely trivial for him. Mahito basically looked at him wrong and he almost killed him. Jogo was his plaything for about like 20 minutes before he decided to give him the chef's pan-seared flambe special for the night. And Mahoraga actually piqued his interest. The anime had Sukuna's fight with Mahoraga like top 3 in the series. Seriously, the anime elevated this to a point that I didn't really think was possible. Make sure y'all thank anyone involved with this project if you see them on social media, please. Sukuna feels that the very concept of love and affection is alien to him. Kashimo tells Sukuna that there must likely be many a sorcerer that attempted to challenge him and give him a fair fight, and he cut every single one of them down. They wanted to know their own worth and challenge themselves to fight the most powerful deity they could think of, and he let not a single one survive. Kashimo asks him, is that not love itself, to respond to their desires in full and not dishonoring them by not responding to their challenge? And Sukuna responds to this with the idea that individuals like Kashimo and himself are loved for their strength, yet he calls Kashimo greedy because solitude troubles him. You see, Sukuna sees himself as an apex predator in the food chain. Just as how we don't see wild bears, lions, or chimpanzees as evil, as we as humans know that if we were to challenge them we would die because they can and will kill us, it's because it's in their nature and they can't be blamed for it. I actually really enjoy this conversation between Kashimo and Sukuna. I know that a lot of people have issues with this fight and there is more than a bit of legitimacy to those claims, but I actually really enjoyed their dynamic. Heading into the duel between the two strongest sorcerers of the time, not only are we heading into a clash of two magnificent powers, but we were heading into a clash of mindsets as well. Sukuna couldn't care less about who is watching him, as the only thing he is focused on is winning his fight. Meanwhile, Gojo wants to free his student, defeat the most maniacal being the Jujutsu world has ever seen, and show off to his students. You guys ever notice how often Gojo says, "My students are watching"? Now obviously it is in a more possessive tone, those are his students. He cares a lot about them, duh. But one thing that a lot of people don't get is Gojo wants to be an inspiration to these kids as well. That's why he tells Megumi not to sell himself short, and that with enough time he could surpass him. He wants his students to look at him and be like, damn, my sensei is so cool. I want to do what he can do. I want to show off just like Gojo sensei. He wants to be an inspiration to his students as their sensei, which if you directly compared this character trait that he has now to himself as a teenager, the difference will be incredibly stark. Son, going into this fight, the hype was at an all-time high. Listen, I'm not going to get into depth with every single thing that happened with this fight because I've done it multiple times at this point, but what I have not talked about is what it was like being in the community at that time, which is what the main point of this video is. The actual fight itself isn't something that we won't ever see again in terms of JJK or manga in general, because there's been plenty of epic fights with a similar, if not longer, amount of screen time that have been shown off recently. But what will be untouched for the foreseeable future will be the community engagement and the lingering effects of this 13 or so chapters. When I tell you that motherfuckers were repping sides like this is some Tokyo Revengers shit, y'all don't want to know when Agenda Kaisen started to pop off. It was this fight right here. The Sukuna stands and Gojo stands were going to war each other for like 4 months straight, and it was a bloodbath on my timeline. The fans of the series legitimately had more beef than the actual combatants themselves. The back and forth between the fandom going from it's fucking Gojo over, bro, we lost, tell the cast to pack it up, to throughout the farmers and the civilians, he is the fraudulent one, Sukuna is cooked. Every chapter was absolutely hilarious. Now, as a Sukuna stan myself, I gotta say this is one of the darkest times of my life up until the very end of the fight. I mean, the panel of Sukuna bleeding from his eyes after getting hit with infinite void for less than a second almost warranted me to get a psychological evaluation and be placed on suicide watch. I'll tell you what though, that last page at the end of 225 legitimately had people depressed for 2 weeks because the series was on break. As soon as people saw that slice on Gojo's neck, those stands manifested PhDs and became neurosurgeons overnight. Yo, bro, motherfuckers were literally bringing up diagrams from medical textbooks and explaining why his neck wound wasn't that bad. Yo, them Gojo stands were not playing, bro. If you weren't in the JJK manga community at that time, I feel genuinely sorry for you because this is one of those, it's legit one of those once in a lifetime experiences. Looking at the clock on Tuesday at like 1 a.m. and waiting for Maya Mura on Twitter to post those leaks is something I will never forget. Plus with Maya giving that like rousing commentary of you guys aren't ready for this next panel, or guys if you're sensitive to blood I would avoid looking at this next page, only added to the hype waiting for the next page to be uploaded. The memes that were made from this fight were absolutely legendary, and they're still being posted about to this day. I could not imagine being an anime-only Jujutsu Kaisen viewer because I don't know how there weren't more people that were spoiled to everything happening. Like, yeah, I know a lot of people would type in all caps on YouTube, Sukuna dominates Gojo's domain, and Sukuna finally summoned Maharaga with a literal screenshot of the chapter as the thumbnail with like 250k views. And a decent amount of people were spoiled, yeah, but I'm surprised there wasn't more people spoiled considering that this entire debacle was popping not only in the JJK community, but other manga communities as well. I mean, Boruto fans were still catching strays the entire time, but that's neither, here nor there. But the domain expansion moments were fine. I mean, that was honestly my biggest gripe with the fight, but my personal favorite reveal was the black flash that Gojo hits Sukuna with. Man, after 100 chapters of this crazy technique being missing and never being seen throughout the entire Culling games, and we get this, that's hard. That's hard. Now, as a Sukuna fan, seeing him get knocked out, it was quite literally the worst day of my life. I could not defend that even if I tried. Seeing my personal GOAT villain eyes roll to the back of his head was disheartening to the very least. This nigga was fighting rice farmers 1,000 years ago! He's washed! Get him off the vid! But as a YouTuber, man, in my 3 years of being on this website, this is some of the most fun I've ever had on this platform. And I'm dead serious too. Every week we were getting some of Gege's best work artistically. The fans were at their loudest, and everyone, regardless of which side of the agenda they were on, were having a good time no matter what they were saying. Do y'all remember when the episode of Mastered UI Goku vs. Jiren was released, and those people from, I believe, Brazil or Mexico were all watching in an arena like it was a boxing match on a large TV. With this level of community engagement that we were having, it felt just like that. Man, like Gojo freestyling a hollow purple with a blue that was just sitting in the air after it killed Agito. You can't make this shit up, man. That's fire. That's fire. I gotta say, without a shadow of a doubt, I have never seen a community more divided than chapter 236. There was a wave of mass depression that swept the fandom as soon as that scene of young Gojo was shown with him at the airport. Now, me personally, I was pretty thrilled. I was pretty excited. A ton of people hate that Gojo was off screen, but he really wasn't really. Like Sukuna's slash to the point where he can cut space because he was lining it was so quick. It didn't really matter how it was shown. It was literally like this. Like that panel of Kusakabe saying Gojo won, it literally happened immediately after that. And plus the fact that even if Gojo saw it, he might have thought it was just another dismantle that was heading his way, so he thought his ability could stop it. Overall, man, we got to see some of the coolest stuff that Jujutsu Kaisen has thrown at us. We get to see Gojo absolutely just pop off and break out these techniques we didn't know he knew, like Falling Blossom of Emotion and Simple Domain. Well, yeah, Simple Domain obviously is, simple, quote unquote, to people that are grade 1 and above. It's so cool to see that Gojo wasn't a one-trick pony just with his own personal innate techniques. I think it's really cool. It's really interesting. We got to see Sukuna actually be scared for the first time in his life, which apparently had not happened in centuries. So that was fantastic. We get to see Mahoraga do a whole bunch of craziness. Gojo's arm flying off was so incredibly hyped for Sukuna's stance that day, man. You had to be there. And that's really what the whole point of this entire video is, man, is that we will never get a fight worthy of that hype and all that build up. We get this clash of ideals. We get the clash of the strongest sorcerer of the modern day and in history. It's so good, man. So good. Absolutely love this fight. Now, I know what y'all are gonna say. Oh, but David, didn't you make that video saying the fight wasn't good? Listen, I enjoyed the fight, right? But there are some things in Jujutsu Kaisen that I like better personally. But that's just me. There are fights that I'm rereading even now. Am I rereading the Gojo versus Sukuna fight? No, not that much. Not that much compared to some other stuff. But it's me, boy Daffy, guys. Before you guys slander me and actually hate me for that take, it's me, boy Daffy, guys, and I will see you guys in the next video. Let me know what you guys think about Gojo versus Sukuna, man. Do you think that we'll ever get a fight worthy of that hype and momentum that hit social media ever again? I'm curious. Anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for joining me on this video. Make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Y'all make sure you take care of yourselves and have a good one. Peace.